Welcome to another episode of League of Knowledge with Panzer Dragon. I'll be your host, Panzer Dragon, and today we're going to be giving my opinion and doing a guide on Mordekaiser. Initially, I was going to make this into one large video and have all 4 guides in the same place, but that would be a 28-minute video. But I decided I want to just separate them all up instead of some big mega video since some of you might get bored. So yeah, I'm just going to separate them. Also, you do have to remember not all things are final, but I do really want to get my opinion out there. So with all that being said, let's get started. So initial opinions is that obviously they're trying to enforce the meta by putting him into a dual bot lane kind of thing, as his W's passive does give him full experience points for the enemies he has killed. And also, it can only be cast if an ally champion is around. But there's definitely a lot of benefits to this ability now. First off, you have sustain from it, since you can drain health from enemies, and if they're champions it's tripled. And it also says monsters, so there's a possibility of some kind of double jungle going on with Mordekaiser. It also doesn't cost health anymore, has a much more lower cooldown than his old version, and the damage can stack if both of you are standing on the same person. And going back to the passive, it's definitely a very unique skill. I like the direction of where they're going with this, but honestly this new mechanic should have been on like a new champion. But anyways, let's talk more about this skill. So it's really good for doing a camp at level 1 with your dual laner. You'll definitely tear up the golems or the gromp when you're doing it, and it's got really good synergy with supports who can gap close, since if they do gap close and lock them down like Nautilus or Leona, they'll be taking a lot of magic damage per second coming from this creeping death. And since it is also a sustained skill, it's definitely going to be good for those ranged pokey AD carries. And yeah, that's basically why I max this skill first. Do remember it doesn't give bonus armor or magic resist anymore, but it's not that big of a deal. And of course, it's definitely much more powerful than his current W. Oh, and I totally forgot you can reactivate the W to drain life from enemies. It also automatically activates at the end of the duration. Next up, we're going to be talking about his passive. So as you can see, his passive now scales with his maximum health. So in a sense, he does scale with health now, but I don't like to emphasize on this stat too much because you need to do damage to actually get some shield, right? And now the decaying stops when you get to 25% of your maximum shield. The shield obtained when damaging enemies with your abilities is less than his old self, but it decays much slower because it only decays by 2% of your base health. So it's definitely an improvement. And also every time he casts a Z onto a champion, he gains 15% of his maximum shield. So if you hit 5 people, you'll get 75% of your maximum shield, which is definitely good for being really tanky. Next up, we're going to be talking about his new Q, and basically what this does is for your next 3 auto attacks, you do bonus magic damage, but it multiplies every time you get to the next hit, up to 9x. So your third hit is going to have a big burst of magic damage onto the enemy. And as you can see, the AD ratio and AP ratio is super high. The multiplier also scales with levels, so I like to max this out second. The reason I wouldn't max this out first is because I'll probably never hit the enemy AD carry with this ability, since, well, you gotta be in melee range to attack the enemy, right? And you're facing an AD carry. So it's like only good for doing jungle camps or team fights. So we're gonna be leveling up for that mid game. A lot of people are saying you should emphasize on building some attack damage for this skill, but honestly the AP ratio is good enough for me. And since you already have base AD, that can be put to great use for this ability. So I don't emphasize on building attack damage at all. Alright, so now you're probably questioning why I don't max out E anymore. So the biggest reason is because the base damage per level is lowered to 30 damage per level. It now also has an AD ratio, so it scales by just me gaining levels. And as you can see, the cooldown does go down by 0.25 seconds, but that's not enough for me to put more points into it. Also, the health cost to use this ability goes up by 12 per level, so you'll have to buy some sort of sustain to keep spamming this poke tool. Something like a Hextech Revolver would be nice here. But thankfully, I max this skill out last since it has really bad scaling on it. And if you're maxing out W or Q, they don't have any health costs, so it's not like you're damaging yourself in any way. And honestly, if you're playing Mordekaiser bot lane with someone else, you're probably not going to win the lane until you get a few levels over the enemy AD carry. So for the time being, you probably just want to try and survive the laning phase. And that's why we max out W for the sustain. And next up, we're going to be talking about his ultimate. So I think the only thing that's changed really, in general speaking of course, is that you can get the dragon now. This dragon is really powerful for objective control. You can use it to siege towers or harass enemies under the tower since it has so much hit point. And it's just really strong to have, and it lasts for a long time. In my opinion, I don't think they should have this. They should like either remove it or nerf some of his other abilities. It's pretty cool to have a dragon pet, but in my opinion it's pretty overpowered at the same time. And also the dragon pet applies to 40% slow. Although sadly I don't think the ghost actually applies to 40% slow. Okay, so next up we're going to be talking about the build. So generally I do feel like Door and Shield is going to be a core item since you want to mitigate the damage coming from the AD carry's poke. Then Riley's Crystal Scepter is a must on Mordekaiser at the moment. Your Q applies a 40% slow, your E and your R's Ghost apply a 40% slow, and his R is a damage over time, so you apply a permanent slow to someone, and your W is a 20% slow, but I think when you reactivate it, it becomes a 40% slow, and of course, he benefits from all the stats from this item. So there's a lot of synergy with this item. Then I just go Leandri's because, well, before, Magic Penetration was good on him, and also since you have Riley's Crystal Scepter, you have really good synergy there, and it did get buffed in the AP items rework. So I'd say it's a really good item for Mordekaiser. And then after you're free to build whatever, I would say you definitely want to build some resist and ability powers, so Zhonya's or Abyssal is good here. Hell, maybe even a Spirit Visage is good here too because of his ultimate and W. CDR is also a good stat on him too, and a lot of people are building Hextech Gunblade on him right now. I don't think it's that great because he already has sustain with his W. His health costs if you don't max out E are fine, and most of his abilities are damage over time or AoE, so you're not getting the full spell vamp. And plus, you already have R for stealing someone's health. Your only saving grace would be your Q. The big burst damage after third hit would restore a lot of hit points. Even then, I still wouldn't build it, but I mean, is it really worth to dish out all that gold for some mediocre stats for Mordekaiser? Nah, I don't think so. It's good on Akali because she has a lot of single target spells, so she can spell vamp a lot, but for Mordekaiser, nah, not really. You already have a lot of sustain anyways. Some people were also talking about Trinity Force. Me personally, I prefer getting more ability power on Mordekaiser and being like an off-tank mage instead of like a bruiser, which Trinity Force is meant for. But I mean, it definitely gives him a lot of stats that he likes. In fact, he benefits from every stat in the Trinity Force except for mana. But me personally, again, I do like the Leandri's because it has really good synergy with Rallies, plus the M-Pen is really helpful for his ultimate. But a build I could see people going is Rylai's and the Trinity Force and then building full tank after. I feel like he'd be a really big threat since he has a lot of CC plus good sustain damage. Or maybe the hybrid build Mordekaiser with the Hextech Gunblade plus Trinity Force and pretending he's Jax. And final opinion, I'm not saying my build is the most optimal, it's just what I would build if I started playing him. But honestly, this guy just scales with everything, and there's definitely a lot of different builds you can try on Mordekaiser, which makes him really interesting. That's why he's probably my favorite champion coming out on this rework. Alright, so let's talk about team fighting with Mordekaiser. Basically, cast your W on a frontline tank, so he's going to be in the middle of everybody dealing a lot of damage. And plus, you also get movement speed so you can catch up and follow up on him. Then you want to just press Q and E on the nearest person towards you. And of course, ult someone when they're about to die. Pretty simple stuff, right? In fact, he plays just like the old Mordekaiser. Although one thing you might want to look out for is the potential to do a lot of damage to a squishy with your third Q hit. As long as you know your damage with it, you can maybe flash onto them and surprise them and kill them. Or of course, show them some mercy. Oh, and I almost forgot, we have to do the runes, masteries, and skill order. So for runes, it's basically going to be an AP mid mage page. The only difference is I exchange one ability power quint for an armor quint, since we'll probably be up against an AD carry. For my masteries, I go 21-9. Pretty simple stuff here. And as for skill order, I would start W, so that we can do the Gromp or Golems really fast. And we can shove out the wave pretty fast too, so we can hit level 2 first. Then I would get E at level 2 so we can harass the enemy, and then Q just because we want all 3 skills. And then I'd max out my R whenever I can, then W, then Q, and E in that priority. And final conclusion for Mordekaiser, he's definitely really fun. I'd say he's more powerful than his live version. He's going to be a very interesting pick for competitive play. I can see him either doing with the jungle and doing that whole AD carry solo lane while they 4-man dive bot. He'll either duel with his support and have an AD carry play top lane, which definitely will be really interesting. And his favorite supports are people with gap closers so he can cast his W onto them. So generally he'll like melee supports, and having the dragon as a pet is really stupid and broken, so they should either remove that or nerf it in some way. Because honestly, it just gives him too much objective control. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see him being played in competitive or even solo queue and what people do with him. Anyways, leave a comment below on what you think of the new Mordekaiser. And thank you for watching this video. I am Panther Dragon, and I'll see you guys next time.